Welcome to a lesson on scales and arpeggios for classical banjo. And today we'll be dealing with scales only. And this information comes from the book I did for Mel Bay called Scales and Arpeggios for Classical Banjo, which you can see here. And I'll put a link in the description for this book from Mel Bay, which is also available at Amazon. And I'll also put a link for a PDF of the first page as well. And the first page deals with just the key of G and its relative minor key, E minor. All the fingerings you'll need for this are written in tablature and standard notation on the PDF. The way I've written these scales, they're all closed position single string scales. What I like about that is all these scale positions are movable and the shapes remain the same as you move all around the neck into the different keys. So this approach to scales is really a classical approach, and it's based on the Segovia scales and other scale studies for classical guitar. The idea behind these scales is to develop left-hand dexterity and also get to know the fingerboard and see where all the different keys lay out on the neck. Let's look at the key of G. So the scale for G major is going to connect all the chord positions that we're familiar with. So we'll start with 3 notes on the 4th string, 3 notes on the 3rd string, then we shift, still on the 3rd string, then another little shift. So let's play that all together slowly. So the trick is the shift on the 3rd string. So you're shifting from your pinky to your 1st finger. So that's going to be the challenge, is that shift. And once you're there, it's pretty easy to the end. Again. So we'll want to practice this ascending and descending. I also recommend that you practice these scales with a metronome, always starting really slow and eventually working your way up to higher speeds. But really the main goal here is to slowly build dexterity and knowledge of the fingerboard, not speed. So let's look at E minor, which is the relative minor of G major. We're going to look at 2 different minor scales. The first one is the melodic minor, and this is the, quote, classical melodic minor scale, which is different ascending than it is descending. So the ascending E melodic minor is really like an E major scale with a flatted 3rd. Let's look at E melodic minor ascending. So we have the same shifting as we had in the G major. 3 notes on the 4th and the 3rd, then shifting up to the 1st finger. Now the descending version of the melodic minor scale in classical music is basically a natural minor scale. So when we're heading back down, the 7th is going to be flatted, the 6th is going to be flatted, and the 3rd is going to be flatted. So descending, it would be this. Let's look at the melodic minor ascending and descending. The other variety of minor that I like to practice and that is in this scale study is the harmonic minor. Now the harmonic minor has a flatted 3rd, a flatted 6th, and a raised 7th. So it's sort of like the E major scale with a flat third and a flat sixth. Let's look at that. And that stays the same, ascending and descending. So it sounds like this. The way I prefer to practice these scales is not just one scale at a time or even one key at a time, but to practice them in a continuous study that flows through the circle of fifths. The way I connect these scales for this continuous study is to add a little melodic line at the end of the major scale that connects to the minor. So that would be. So coming down the major scale would be. Into the minor. I also have a little melodic figure to connect the two minor types of scales together. Connecting the two minor scales sounds like this. The two minor scales together would sound like this. Once you finish the minor, there's another melodic figure that leads into the next key, which is a fifth from G major, which is D major. So that would be. So here's an example of G major connected to E melodic minor connected to E harmonic minor, all flowing together. This might seem like a lot of information to keep track of just to be able to play a major scale and a minor scale, but being aware of all the scale degrees and which ones are flat and which ones are not when you're playing these different scales really helps you learn the fingerboard and helps you understand the scales as well. As I mentioned, my favorite method to practice these scales is a continuous scale study, which is included in the back of my book. And it's all written out with all the fingering, and it moves from G major all the way through the whole circle of fifths, playing all the major and minor scales in one continuous flowing study. So here's an example of the continuous scale study just flowing from one key to the next with a connecting melodic figure. And I'll go through D major just to give you an idea how that works. So starting on G. Minor. So you see how that continuously moves and you end up going through all of the keys, major and minor, without stopping. I hope you've enjoyed this look at scales on the banjo. The next video I'll do will be about arpeggios on the banjo.